Tom Singleton is a prolific pedophile, heroin dealer, and outright criminal. They had continuous access to that child, and the child would be submissive because they'd already been desensitised through the trauma of the first rape. So they'd participate more freely. And those who didn't participate freely were drugged and murdered.
Don Burke was another one on Channel 9, wasn't he?
Oh, Berkey was a prolific. Berkey lost his fortune through paying gag money to the many, many victims of his sexual orientation for children. That was the main reason why Carey never ever let him come back to Channel 9, was the fact that he'd been done for so many times for paedophilia, and it was covered up. Ray Hadley is a part of Alan Jones's crew, the original paedophile crew. Ray Hadley is protected by his son, who is a very powerful New South Wales police officer who protects pedophiles and protects his father for being one. Molly.
He's the Jimmy Savile of Australia, by the sounds.
Of course.
Countdown, hosting.
Many of the bands in Australia did not make it because they refused to participate in child sex acts at Molly Meldrum's parties. Molly Meldrum was a prolific child abuser, and you can tell the good bands who were not pedophiles or did not turn a blind eye to pedophilia, because they're the ones who never ever made it on the show Countdown. They never made it on Countdown, and now bands like Cold Chisel, The Radiators, Rose Tattoo. Frank Houston was a pedophile, but this is what I'd like to know, is that, who it was within the Macquarie investment industry who financed him when he was released from jail for raping a boy for pedophilia, and even though he was never to be worked with children again in New Zealand, who was it within Macquarie Investment, where Malcolm Turnbull, the now Prime Minister of Australia, sat on that board, who financed him to come to Australia and cleared his record to run a youth centre?
Yes.
Who was it?
And also
Macquarie Investment, the bottom of the harbour scheme. The bottom of the harbour scheme is now the Panama Papers. It's all are involved in the Wood Royal Commission.
And yet Tina is a very good singer, and it turns out she's a very good composer. So she and a good dance. She could dance as well. So she had all the ability, yet she wouldn't play to the pedophile tune, would she?
No, she wouldn't. So, and Franco Arena was one of the senators from New South Wales Parliament who was forcing the Wood Royal Commission through to try to expose them. They film it, and then you're blackmailed. Many of the Australian Prime Ministers they did this to. Many of the Australian government, people within the Australian government, they did this too. However, there are several within the Australian government who actively participated anyway. They weren't blackmailed into it. However, all the New South Wales police covered it all up because it was such a thing, because many of the magistrates were child abusers and involved in the Wood Royal Commission and were named in the Wood Royal Commission. Everyone from Bob Carr, who is a convicted pedophile. Bob Carr was Premier of New South Wales, and Bob Carr molested two boys in a hotel while he was in state parliament, who were the children of an aide. And this aide was going through a horrific divorce, and had brought his children to work, and we had left them in this motel suite, with several in a row, that the New South Wales New South Wales government had hired, and Bob Carr molested them, abused them, raped them, and then the father came back. His kids told him, and it was all put under a parliamentary privilege and sealed. Compensation was paid, and it was all covered up. Bob Hawke started the Wood Royal Commission because he actually had an idea that he wanted every child to be out of poverty, and it went against the curriculum of the Costello brothers and the other organised pedophiles within the actual charities, politicians and all that. Mr. Costello ended up becoming treasurer of Australia under the other evil pedophile connected person, Prime Minister John Howard. Costello orchestrated all the bottom of the harbour scheme through St George Bank, and that made up another bank called St George Building Society, that made a bank called the New South Wales State Bank. And they're laundering all the drug money, all the brothel money, all the pedophile money through false charities. Anthony Kidman and Amos Nichols were associated in Hawaii and Australia. That is why she had to divorce her parents, was that this man, Mr. Kidman, could find anyone because he was the head of the psychologists of Australia. And he could blackmail anyone he wanted because anyone who'd spoken to a psychiatrist, he had access to their notes. So anyone who'd confessed some crime, you know, if they were in a case against the family and the pedophiles, Mr. Kidman would threaten to then blackmail them by saying, well, you mention anything, we'll expose this about your past. And just, you know, it's only coincidence, isn't it, that Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman met on Young Talent Time, run by Johnny Young. They both performed on Young Talent Time with Johnny Young, a convicted pedophile.
A lot of the kids came forward from Young Talent Time, said they'd been sexually assaulted on set, didn't they?
Yes, quite a few. One of the boys actually got sold to Liberace and taken back to America.
Jamie Redfern, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jamie Redfern was sold to Liberace.
He was sold, wasn't he? He was trafficked and set up, as his little boy. And the whole world was told, oh, isn't this wonderful? He's given him a job opportunity or whatever, but he was actually sold to a pedophile.
Tina Arena, Franco Arena's niece, was a member of Young Talent Time.
Yes.
And it is my belief that it was because of her and a man by the name of Craig McLaughlin from Neighbours, where other child abusers were set.
You're saying about Craig McLaughlin, his involvement in Frank Arena, niece, Tina Arena.
Tina Arena and Craig McLaughlin, I believe, were the people who spoke out about Channel 9, and for that they tried to destroy their careers. Craig McLaughlin was unable to get work after he talked about what had happened.
Yeah.
He tried to form a band called Checkmate, and that failed because these people controlled the music industry as well. So,
and he was very talented, wasn't he? He was multi-talented, Craig McLaughlin.
He was a very multi-talented young man, yes. And Tina Arena, I believe because of her family being quite powerful, she was able to withstand, and a lot of the pedophiles weren't game to touch her because of who her family were.
Yeah, right. And so she does come across...
Would have witnessed.
Yeah, she comes across as very strong, and she's very popular now, very successful in France.
That's right. She couldn't get successful in Australia because all the people who control the entertainment industry are involved in the Wood Royal Commission. They get away with their crimes, and they get away with taking all the money. Frank Houston and all his mates, or Brian Houston now, keep all the money. So it's actually legalised. All this Royal Commission does is find out all the evidence so that they can shut it in a case and seal it for 40 years. The Wood Royal Commission was sealed in a 90-year seal by John Howard in the middle of the night because so many of his ministers and 10 members of Parliament, and him being a lawyer himself from Gladesville, were taken. So he had to protect his treasurer, Peter Costello. He had to protect Peter Costello's brother, Tim Costello, who runs a very big charity, because they had all the money.
And yet Bob Hawke was one of my abusers, and so many of Gough...
amazing thing.
Yeah, and Gough Whitlam, and, like half of Gough Whitlam's party were, I remember being at pedo parties. And Menzies, I've heard about Robert Menzies. About John Bell and Bruce Spence. Now, those are significant names to me because, as you know, they're two of my prime abusers. So, tell me what you know about John Bell.
John Bell was a person who abused a lot of the Aboriginal children off the streets of Sydney. He was renowned for pretending to be feeding them. And when Bert Newton was told to go away from Channel 9 when he was exposed for his prolific pedophile acts with himself and Graham Kennedy and Bert Newton's son.
Is that Matthew?
Matt. Bert Newton shared his son with Graham Kennedy. John Bell openly let Bert Newton come down to the theatre, and many children were abused out the back of the theatre by Bert Newton and John Bell.
Is that the Nimrod Theatre?
Yeah, who the parents had left there to thinking that they were safe, just like the kids who were left at the Young Talent schools. The parents thought the kids were safe, but they weren't. Many of them were told that, well, the only way you're going to make it in this industry is if you sleep with a few people, and and so I guess a lot of the children did, and it's a sad thing that that's how they make it in the entertainment industry. You got to bed down with them at an early age.
Casting couch from a young age, eh?
Casting couch, literally.
Graham Kennedy was always the sort of man who nurtured young talent. He enjoyed giving young people a chance on television. He was a great mentor. He mentored a lot of young people. You knew that if you went to his dressing room and it was locked, he'd be inside doing some mentoring.
And Neville Wran is an original Balmain boy. And Balmain is the centre point for the pedophiles. Alan Jones established himself in Balmain. And many of the people who played for rugby union knew that he was openly a pedophile. Alan Jones, the cases at King's College were all covered up out of embarrassment that these wealthy people's children had been molested by Alan Jones while he was a PE teacher there. And they were that ashamed that rather than have him done over, they covered it up because they didn't want their children to be known as having been abused. So Alan Jones was a pedophile even then. He groomed children at the church, at the school. He received love letters from some of the students at the school. Alan Jones then went on to become captain of the rugby union of Australia because he was such a blackmailing sort of person, and had got himself into that position. And when he was in France, he was actually found in a motel room with a young boy having sexual relations while he was coach of the Australian Wallabies rugby union side. He then threatened to expose it all, and because they were going to jail him in France for it, they wanted him. And he actually blackmailed Kerry Packer to actually get him out of the jail in France and bring him back to Australia. And it is still one of the mysteries of today as to what Kerry Packer paid or did to the French court to have them release Alan Jones on bail. And as soon as he came back to Australia, he never ever went back there to face the charges. So, the case was, I don't know what happened with that case. But Alan Jones was also found having sexual relations with young boys in toilets in England as well, just before that. So everyone knew he was a prolific pedophile. Don Lane was the same. Don Lane was a prolific pedophile, horrific American pedophile who had numerous cases of child abuse against him that were dropped because of intimidation of the witnesses and the actual victim by Don Lane's criminal friends. He wasn't called Don for nothing, the Don. It went to the point where one family were able to be strong enough to actually force the police to arrest him and have him charged And while the New South Wales police were coming through one door of the Channel 9 network to arrest him on the set for the midday show, which by coincidence Bert Newton was very prominent on, and other police had rung Channel 9 to inform them that detectives were coming there to arrest him for pedophilia. So he was thrown straight on a plane and taken back to America until the case was paid, till the case had gone through and the victim had been paid off in gag money. So involved Malcolm Turnbull's wife when she was a member of Sydney City Council. Many of the child kiddie brothels were opened because she cleared them for a business licence, and then the fire warden cleared them for when he did the fire inspection. So she wrote a story about the child pedophile, the child sex slave industry in Sydney. So she wrote this story, and it was going to be put in the magazine, and it passed the owner of the magazine's desk, who's known as the King of Porn of Australia, and that is Malcolm Turnbull. And as soon as he realised that all his people were going to come undone, he authorised the murder of Sally Ann Huxford.
Oh, so our current Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull ordered the murder of Sally Ann, the journalist.
He ordered the murder of Sally Ann because he was actually a lawyer for Kerry Packer.
Yes.
And he was sent to America to negotiate the rights for Playboy in Australia with Hugh Hefner, so that Kerry Packer was meant to own the rights to the Playboy.
And Hefner's a big pedophile too, we all know that.
And so what happened was he went over there as Kerry Packer's lawyer, but when he came to ownership of the contracts, he put his own name down instead of Kerry Packer's. So he owns the rights to all pornography in Australia, and yet he's the Prime Minister of this country now. Malcolm Turnbull is one of the biggest owners of pharmaceutical industry in Australia. Cover up the links between the House of Lords and the organised pedophiles in Sydney, which was networked through Alexander Downer. He was known as the colonial cocksucker. Alexander Downer went to English private school where the children of members of the House of Lords and the elite made him suck their dicks. And he was the main orchestrator between the House of Lords and the pedophile groups within Australia.
So you're saying the Westminster pedophile ring that Jimmy Savile and the royal family and everyone have been linked to?
Yeah, that's all Alexander Downer. The man with the golden voice.
Yeah.
No, John Laws was not the man with the golden voice. John Laws was known within the community as the man with the golden arm. John Laws was a prolific heroin user, and that's why he always wears sunnies, because he was also. But never. John Laws was renowned for child abuse with young people out at his farm at Yarramulong. He'd invite them out for parties out there, and where the children were raped and either murdered or drugged up that psychotic that no one would believe them once they're released back onto the street. But once you got the key to that gate, you entered John Laws's property, and it was a world unto itself. And over the other side of the ridge was access to a lot of the other properties going through YE right through to Muswellbrook. And whose famous property was at Muswellbrook? Kerry Packer. John Singleton is that prolific within being known as a pedophile that even though he owns the stadium in Gosford where many of the football teams from the National Rugby League play, he has been yelling for years to get a team on the Central Coast in the NRL, National Rugby League, and the reason why they refuse to is because John Singleton is linked to them. Because he owns their home ground at Gosford, they do not want him to have any participation in the NRL because of his pedophile acts. The same thing with Alan Jones. As you see, Alan Jones has nothing to do with rugby league or rugby union anymore because Alan Jones was once coach of Balmain. And while he was coach, he was raping all the little boys. Graham Blundell was an enabler to be able to entice the young girls through a TV show called Alvin Purple, because they put the show on that all girls wanted to have sex with Alvin for some reason. So because that was the persona of the TV show, was him having sex with all these women, it put him in the position that when he was out in public, all young girls wanted to fuck him. Wanted to have sex with him. So he was one of the main enablers who took young girls and boys to the pedophile party. Chief Justice Kirby was a prolific pedophile, and the main cover-up for the pedophiles who did get caught within the high-profile ones. Just like he was in with Avery, and he was the magistrate Avery used to cover up and get all those boxes ticked and get it covered up. Magistrate Kirby, ran many of the Royal Commissions, from Black Death and Custody to other Royal Commissions at the time. I hope everyone understands that, we are trying our best down here in Australia to expose this international pedophile ring